Hi everyone, I'm Benjamin. Welcome to my book club. I think like many of us, I've got probably too many books, so join me as we get rid of some of them. So I'm going to try and get a hold of this book collection that I've got. I've been a collector for a long time and I need to start kind of paring it down a bit. So I'm going to try and fall into sort of a one in, one out situation. I'm sure I won't manage to hold that completely, but that's the plan. So I've got a stack of books here split into 3 or 4 sort of categories, and we'll just quickly go through them. So the first category is horror-ish books that I just haven't got to reading and I'm just not going to. And I'll go over why through each of them. First up, I picked up this one at a bookstore. There was a 2-for-1 deal. There was one book on the table I really badly wanted. I don't remember what it was. Actually, I think it was The Only Good Indian. Yeah, I think that's what it was. And there was nothing else on the table that was even remotely interesting to me. So I grabbed Slender Man by... I genuinely don't know the author. It's not on here anywhere. Slender Man, big internet sensation. I loved the games. I mean, for what they were. I like the kind of internet lore behind it, but I'm never going to read the book, especially not one that doesn't even have an author's name on it. That can't be good. So yeah, that one I'm more than willing to part with. Next up is a Stephen King book with Owen King. I believe it's one of his sons. Sleeping Beauties. I got this off of my sister. I can't remember if she finished it or not, but her review of it was not very good. The reviews I see of it online are fine, and just at this point I've got half a dozen Stephen King books already that I need to read, all of which are rated much higher than this one. But the number of books I've got, I'm not going to get to this one for years, so I'm willing to part with this one. Next up, Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. And while a fantastic book, this cover is just atrocious. It's the movie tie-in cover. I don't know if you can see that there. It's just not very nice. The book feels a bit cheap. I got it from a used bookstore very cheaply, but I'm willing to part with it because I picked up the box set of the nice covers, so we've got those ones. Finally in this category is another Stephen King book, If It Bleeds. I picked this up while reading The Outsider. I believe this is a sequel to The Outsider. I haven't actually looked at many reviews of this, but I picked it up while reading The Outsider because I was enjoying myself. And then after finishing The Outsider and deciding that I didn't really like that book much at all, I'm not going to get to the sequel. And it's in this big paperback form that I don't like, so that one can go. Next up, we've got a handful of books from sort of crime or just normal literary fiction that have been sitting on my shelf for a long time. I've picked up here and there, a few I think I got from my mother, a few I think I got from a friend. And I just haven't got to at this point, and I've got so many books on my TBR, I'm not going to get to them. And if I really want to read any of these, they're not going to be that hard to find again, I'm sure. So first up is Mirrorland by Carol Johnson. I don't know anything about this one, but happy to get rid of that. Then Not Dark Yet by Peter Robinson. Yeah, it's a crime novel. I think it's one of the Alan Banks crime novels, which highlights one of the issues I have with crime fiction in that they're all, look at this. That's, what, half 2-3 dozen crime novels in the Investor Banks novels, and I don't like the idea of just jumping into one. I want to start at the start if I'm going to read something, and then I'm looking at reading 35 books. No, I'm not into it. After that is The Hunted by Gabriel Bergmoser. I believe it's got pretty good reviews, but I'm not going to get to it, so it can go. The Shining Girls by Lauren Bukes. Again, I believe it's a crime novel. I'm not into crime novels right now. I haven't read this one in 2 or 3 years. I don't see myself getting to it in 2 or 3 years, so it can go. And then this one, The Legacy by Caroline Bond, I think is just sort of like a literary fiction about a family after their parents die. So it's a powerful novel about love and loss. It's not interesting enough for me to get into over, the 100 of books or so that are on my TBR. So next up, I've got some books that I've actually read and I'm getting rid of. First off is one that is a book I actually quite really like, but The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I think it's a classic. I loved this book as a teenager, but I'm never going to read it again, and this copy of it isn't particularly aesthetically pleasing. It's just taking up space on the shelf that could be other books. So while I loved this book, I'm willing to pass it on at this point. Next is Puzzle House by Duncan Ralston. I love death game stories and books and movies, and so I've tried to read all the death game stuff I can. If you've got any suggestions for death game things, then please leave them. I think I've read almost all of them. And this one was just not good at all. I'm sorry. It wasn't smart or intelligent. The twist in it is boring. The games themselves aren't very well designed, and the characters are so flat two-dimensionally and still somehow act in ways that don't make any sense to their character. No, would not suggest. Absolutely willing to get rid of that one. Next up is a crime fiction book that comes really highly recommended and I just found fine. And that's Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I think the book's great, probably for crime fiction fans. For me, I found it fine. I enjoyed it. I'm never going to read it again, so I'm willing to get rid of it. I think I gave it like a 5 out of 10 for me. Which, might just mean I'm not into crime fiction. But that's what it is. Next up is a short novella, The Test by Sylvian Nouvelle. Which was pretty okay. It didn't go the direction I thought it was. It's about a man sitting the British citizenship test in a sort of not too distant future. And things go awry when there's a kidnapper involved. And it's pretty good. I'd probably suggest reading it, but it's, I'm not going to read it again, so I'm willing to get rid of it. Another short novella is Come Closer by Sarah Gran. This one got a lot of talk online, like this year and last year, I feel. And if I'm honest, I didn't get it. The talk online, that is. I got the book. The book is not hard to get. It's a very standard demonic possession story where things... I couldn't tell for a while if it was kind of a satire, but at this point I don't think so. It's just the characters aren't very interesting. The possession follows just such a, step-by-step guide. There's some real convenient, almost lazy plot points in here. They find like books and magazine quizzes about demonic possession that are just laughably simple and like unrealistic. I didn't enjoy this book at all, so I'm willing to get rid of it. Now, the next one's kind of a classic, and I might get roasted for, but it's Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. I thought the book was fine. I went looking for Agatha Christie's best book, and this is the one that came up a lot, although maybe under a different title. And it was fine. I found myself disappointed in the ending. It didn't seem like the fun, clever twist that I was hoping for, or solution that I was hoping for. The characters were really good. It's very well written. You can't argue with that, but for me, I just didn't enjoy it. Then next is the only Dean Koontz book I've read. And I think maybe I started off at the wrong point. I'm going to read more Dean Koontz, but maybe not for a little bit. And that one's TikTok. I thought the book was a bit silly, not very scary, not super enjoyable. And then I found out that it was kind of written as a palate cleanser after one of his books that he says was one of his darkest ones. So it's on purpose a bit lighter, a bit sillier, a bit more fun. And it's probably my fault for going into it expecting something else from Dean Koontz, that I didn't enjoy this one as much. But like I read this one, I think last year, and I can already not remember very much of this book at all. There's a cursed doll. It deals a lot with Vietnamese Americans, I believe. Yeah, there's not much I can remember about this one, so I'm going to pass it on. And then finally for this category is The Mountain by Luca D'Andrea. A story about a family moving back to their, I believe, home in like the Italian Alps. and then mysterious murders and disappearances happen. And while I enjoyed the book while I was reading it, I think I gave it like a 6 out of 10. I thought it was pretty fine. I'm never going to read it again. I've lent it to the only person I think might read it, and they've agreed that it was fine. There's a weird twist in it, which was kind of enjoyable. The characters are really well written. If you like sort of semi-supernaturally crime thrillers, then probably give this one a go. And then finally, we've got 4 books from one of my favourite sci-fi series of all time that I'm getting rid of, and that's the Ian M. Banks Culture series. I'm getting rid of this copy of Use of Weapons, which is one of my favourite books of all time. I'm getting rid of this copy of Surface Detail, which, while not the strongest Culture series book, I still enjoyed. And I'm getting rid of this copy of Hydrogen Sonata, which is the final Culture novel. And I remember buying this one when it came out and being very excited that it came out so quickly, and then finding out that it came out so quickly because he wrote it while he had cancer and wanted to get it finished, and was very sad. But a great book. And I'm also getting rid of this old battered copy of Accession, which is my favourite of the Culture novel series, I think. And I'm getting rid of them finally because I finally have the whole collection in these orbit covers in this size, which took me so much difficulty to get. This copy of Accession, especially, took me 3 or 4 goes of buying books online to get. They just kept sending me the wrong one. I kept talking with them, confirming they had the cover that I wanted, and then they'd send me this cover. So then I'd send it back and get it sorted out. But finally, I've got the whole collection in this size. I no longer need big paperbacks and the wrong Accession, so I can get rid of those ones. So yeah, this is my first unhaul, and it feels pretty good to kind of clean some space, not only on the shelf, but sort of, in your mind. I don't need to worry about these pile of books that are on my TBR that I just don't want to read. I don't need to worry about books that I've read and didn't really enjoy and now have to look at every time I'm looking at my shelf. I'm not sure how often I'll do these. I'm probably going to try and pair them with any time I do a book haul video, which I've got one coming up soon. If you want to check that out, the playlist of all my hauls and whatnot will be up here. I'd love if you could leave me a comment letting me know which of these books you disagree with me on, which books you would have kept and why. I'd love if you could subscribe if you like this sort of content, and remember, keep reading.